What is the use of having a car if you can't drive it? What's the use of having an aircraft if you can't fly it? Just find a person who can do it. Problem solved. For real, Jack didn't know what to do next. But all the same, he decided not to think about it for now. He would think about it another time. So, he went back to the mansion and took a good rest. When he woke up the following day, he found several system notifications hanging in front of him. You've earned $1,183,530. Multiplier applied. You've received $118,353,000. 13 new first income rewards received. In accumulation period. After removing the notifications from the front of his vision, Jack took the phone on the bedside table and looked at the bank message. Flyers Bank Savings Account received $117,169,470. Your balance is $1,143,960,077. Jack had told the managers that the income would be handed in at the end of the week. For that reason, Jack only received the bonus that came after the multiplier. Now, it was already 7 in the morning. So, he got out of bed and headed downstairs to prepare breakfast for himself. After he finished preparing the food, he headed to the gym to do some workouts. After an hour, he took a shower before going back to the kitchen for his breakfast. Since he had been in the gym for over an hour, the food had already gotten cold. With no other choice, he put them in the oven to warm them up for a while. Fried eggs, several slices of toasted bread, and a cup of coffee. After that, he decided to start by visiting Homescope Properties Limited. He wanted to finish the payment for the palace. After all, how could a billionaire like him have a small debt of tens of millions? In fact, it was less than 20 million. He changed into a white shirt, a pair of navy blue pants, white sneakers, and a black leather jacket. Getting out of the mansion, he went to the garage. The walls were still raised and nothing had changed since he left the previous day. Going to the switch, he flicked it and everything went back to being normal as the staircase and pathway disappeared into the ground. In the garage, there was a Bentley Continental GT, a Suzuki, and a Bugatti Veyron. Currently, the Bentley Bentayga was being parked at the apartment that he'd gotten George, Agnes, and Charles. Even the Freightliner was there. He drove the Bentley out of the compound, heading straight towards Homescope Properties Limited. Within 30 minutes or so, he'd already gotten to the building where the Homescope Properties Limited was located. After parking the car, he headed straight in. Jack's current style, although not that much of a show of strength, showed that he could at least afford some properties, either renting or buying. So, the moment that he entered, a lady went forward to greet him. "Hi, handsome. Would you like to buy a house?" The lady asked with a smile. "I'm sorry, but I'm here to complete the payment." Jack replied sincerely. He looked at the crowd and noticed that the lady that had attended to him previously wasn't present. So, he couldn't depend on her to complete the procedures. "Can I get the manager?" he asked the lady. The lady wasn't happy at all. After all, she thought that Jack was here to buy a house. In that way, she could earn a commission. Who knew that he was here to pay the money for a house that he took on installments? "I'm sorry, but the manager is busy," the girl replied plainly. Her face no longer had that smile that was on when she was welcoming him. Jack was surprised by such a drastic change in attitude. But he wasn't here to joke. He was here to complete the payment before going to look for a building that could act like the headquarters of Jackson Enterprise. "So, how am I going to be helped here?" Jack asked. "I don't know. Maybe come back tomorrow?" The lady answered, her tone getting slightly irritated. Jack raised his brows. It was currently close to 9 in the morning. How could the manager be busy as early in the morning and that she couldn't even attend to him? "Can you let her know that I'm the one here? I'm sure that she'll let me see her," Jack asked. "I'm sorry, but I can't do it." The lady shook her head vehemently. It seemed that the conversation between them had attracted the attention of other sales ladies. Currently, there were only a few clients present in the floor on which Jack was on. 6 sales ladies came and one of them asked, "What's going on, Gloria?" "Humph, this guy over here came here to pay for a small house that he'd gotten through hire purchase. Now, he says that he wants to see the manager." Gloria said all of these with her expression filled with disdain. Jack was surprised. What the heck? When did he buy a small house? He'd purchased the biggest house that they had. And now, he was being told that he had purchased a small one. "Oh, handsome, what Gloria said is right. Currently, our manager is quite busy. So, you'll have to come back next week." After hearing Gloria's words, one of the ladies spoke. Jack was stunned speechless. From a single day to a whole week. What a big difference. Just as he thought that this was it, another lady spoke. "You should come back next month." Only then will you have a higher chance of meeting the manager. No, next year will be better. So, you should leave now. Right, you should leave now. No need to block the path. Yes, there's too much traffic here. Jack could only stare at them without having a word to say. Next month, what work was Sabrina doing that it would keep her busy for a whole week? Blocking the path? Aren't you the ones blocking the path? Traffic? You're the ones that are gathered around me. Furthermore, the whole floor is almost empty. What do you mean by saying that this place was getting congested? Seeing that their words were getting even more weird the more they spoke, Jack had no choice but to call Sabrina. Otherwise, he wasn't sure that he could handle all of this. Who are you calling? A lady asked curiously. The manager, Jack replied sincerely. The lady sneered and said, "Do you think that the manager gives her phone number to anyone? Let me see you call her. You can't just brag in front of me." Jack simply shook his head as he saw that the other ladies were about to start talking. It seemed that these ladies who always fought each other for a client were quite united. Anyway, he called Sabrina. In 2 rings, the phone was received. Then, Sabrina's surprised and excited voice came from the other side. "Hello, Mr. Jack. Why are you calling me?" she asked. "Well, I came here to complete the payments, but your staff members are saying that you're busy and that I'll have to come back next year." Jack said the most recent time that he was told to come back. "What? How dare they?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Jack. I'll be there in a minute," Sabrina shouted from the other end. Jack could hear the sound of things moving and he could guess that Sabrina was rushing from her office. Jack then hung up the call. He decided not to say a word and wait for Sabrina to come down. "Kiki, what did she say?" "Right. Did she say that she'll fire us? Did you get someone to pretend to be the manager?" Jack wondered if these ladies had taken some medicine that made them irritated. So, he decided to keep his mouth shut, his face showing no changes in emotion, and at the same time, he ignored whatever they were saying. Upon seeing that Jack was ignoring them, these ladies were angered further. They began shouting and slandering him of causing trouble here. A small crowd that wanted to watch the show had already gathered. So, the show had to continue. Otherwise, they wouldn't subscribe to the channel. But all the same, Jack didn't react. The ladies were getting more and more angry when they saw this. They were just about to forget about their manners and start cursing him when hurried footsteps approached them. Followed by that was an angry shout. "What do you think you're doing?" It was Sabrina's voice. The ladies were surprised when they heard this voice. Their bodies trembled when they saw Sabrina approaching them with anger shown on her face. She shoved some of them aside and approached Jack. She then gave a slight bow and said, "Mr. Jack, I'm sorry that I've shown you this embarrassing side." The ladies were stunned. Then, they began sweating even more while trying to find what Jack's identity was. If even their manager had to apologize by bowing, then who were they? Just small-time salespersons to dare and shout in front of him? Upon seeing how sincere she was, Jack had no intention of making things difficult for her. So, it's okay. Nothing bad happened. Sabrina heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing that Jack wasn't angry. She admired him even more as she had heard from afar how the ladies were slandering Jack and shouting at him. She then shifted her gaze towards the 6 ladies. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know who he is? He's the one that bought the Prince and Princess Palace, Mr. Jack Alfonso." Sabrina's words were like bombs in the hearts of the 6 ladies. They could only stare blankly at Jack, not knowing what to do next. In this, they weren't alone as the fence-sitting fans were left wide-eyed. "From this moment on, you're no longer part of the staff of Homescope Properties Limited. Pack up and leave at this moment." Sabrina's words were stern and decisive. She knew all too well that Jack wasn't someone that could be offended. After all, purchasing a mansion for over $30 million, although it wasn't the original price, showed that he had to have assets worth $100 million in the least. To be able to take out that liquid amount of money when most of their wealth was in terms of assets, he sure had to be a wealthy person. The ladies tried to beg for forgiveness, but Sabrina had none of it. So they could only try asking Jack for forgiveness. After all, it wasn't something easy for them to get the job as salespersons in a big real estate agency like Homescope Properties Limited. But no matter how they begged, Jack ignored them. His reasoning was clear. Everyone had to bear the consequences of their actions. After all, they were sales ladies and they had just tried driving out a client. That was already out of character for a salesperson. Not to mention the fact that they had slandered him. He could as well sue them, but he didn't have time to waste on such minor things. On seeing that Jack had no intention of forgiving them, the ladies could only leave dejectedly. But as they left, they stared daggers at Gloria. "Gloria, didn't you say that he just purchased a small house on hire purchase? I didn't know that he was a big shot." He's wearing simple clothes. So, I guess that he wasn't rich. Gloria replied with a low and guilty voice. You guessed? You were making guesses instead of asking first? You'll have to see how we're going to get food. I'll settle the balance in one bulk, Jack stated upon seeing that there would be nobody causing trouble again. Sabrina was stunned once again. One had to know that the price of Prince and Princess Palace was at least $38 million. Jack's current balance was $18 million. He had previously paid a deposit of $20 million. Now, he said that he was going to complete the payment. One had to know that Jack had given an estimate that he would finish the payment in a month, which was seen as a short period of time. Now, not even a week had gone by, and he was here to complete the payment for the mansion. Sabrina was both excited and worried. She wondered if Jack had decided to complete the payment at once so that he could cut ties with them. Mr. Jack, I hope you can forgive my incompetence in managing my subordinates, Sabrina said sincerely. Jack was once again surprised. He wondered to himself, what's up with people nowadays? Have I not said that this matter is nothing big? Why is she looking at me as if I'm going to punish her? It's okay. In fact, I wanted to buy another building. Jack waved his hand helplessly as he stated these words. With $1 billion in his account, he could now afford to buy an office building. In this way, the headquarters would be established. If he could get the building here, there would be no need for him to run around in the city looking for a building to buy. Jack's words immediately elevated Sabrina's mood. But she was even more angry at the 6 ladies. They had almost lost such a big client. This way, please. Sabrina led Jack to the top floor, where her office was located and several high-end mansions, villas, and buildings models were. Jack looked at the buildings and said, I want the best building present in the city. It doesn't matter how much the price is, I'll take it. Sabrina smiled sweetly as she said, we're the best real estate agency in the city. So, we have the best buildings, mansions, and villas to be sold or rented out in the city. Jack nodded. The Prince and Princess Palace was a good example of what Sabrina was saying. Sabrina gave him several recommendations before she brought him to the masterpiece. It was a 30-story building. It was known as the Business Overlord Building. From the model present here, Jack could see that it was good enough to be used as the headquarters of Jackson Enterprise. The parking space was ample enough. That was the surfaces. Then, there was an underground parking as well. There were 2 different types of elevators present. One that could access all the floors and one that couldn't access the top floor. Furthermore, there was a smart system that was installed in the building. For example, a person would just need to say the floor that she was going to, and the elevator would take them there. The office building itself was located at the very center of the city. It was the tallest building present in Inchoate City. The others around it, the tallest amongst them was only 23-story. The sides of the building were covered in floor-to-ceiling glass. These hardened glasses had a special feature. One could look outside from inside, but not vice versa. Jack nodded. This building was modern. This was what he needed currently. So, he had the intention of buying it. Currently, the Dante family has the intention of buying it. But I can't give you a priority as they have not yet made a decision in whether to buy it or not. Sabrina said, I'm taking it now. What's the price? Upon hearing that there was someone already eyeing his building, Jack made a decision. He'll buy the building before they noticed. In this way, he could get the building that was now considered a landmark of Inchoate City. The total cost of the building is $700 million. This is adding all the costs of processing the certificates, the deeds, and licenses. Sabrina said this as she eyed Jack expectantly. If it was another person, even if they were a member of the Big Five of Inchoate City, she wouldn't talk about the price so casually. She would definitely talk about the price of a floor in the building. But Jack had a mysterious identity. And he had the surname Alfonso. So she knew that he might be related to Inchoate City's Alfonso family. That family was far bigger than Dante family. If they wanted to purchase that building, they wouldn't have much of a trouble. Why is it so? Jack asked, but was interrupted by Sabrina. Expensive? That's due to the equipment and the technology found there. Furthermore, it's the landmark of Inchoate City. Any person that will set up her business there would have her reputation boosted. Sabrina said, though the light in her eyes dimmed slightly. I meant to say that it's quite cheaper than I expected. Jack corrected. The price surprised Jack a lot. He had expected that such a building would be worth at least $1 billion. Who knew that it was only slightly over $500 million? Sabrina's mouth hung open as her eyes bulged in their sockets. She didn't know how to react in this situation. One had to know that an office building was expensive than a mansion. After all, the office had more commercial value than a mansion. This was the reason as to why Prince and Princess Palace, although it wasn't expensive considering its level, but its commercial value was lower than an office building. Although it could be rented, those who could rent such a mansion were small in number in the city. Full payment for both the palace and the office building. Here's the card, Jack said while handing over his card. Sabrina came out of her stupor as she stared at Jack incredulously. She looked at the normal card as she wondered, how rich is he in that such a large sum of money is placed in a normal card? One had to know that in a bank, there were different types of cards. There were normal cards that could be used by anyone as long as they had their savings in the bank. Then, there were VIP cards that could be given only after a certain amount of money was deposited in the account. But still, there were different levels of VIP cards. There were those for $1 million deposit, 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, 500 million being the last one. As for Jack, who was spending $718 million at once, he had to have a deposit of more than $500 million. For that, he would be given a special card by the bank. With trembling hands, Sabrina took the card. Although she trusted Jack, she still had to confirm that there was the required amount of money in the card. After all, Jack's card was a normal one. After swiping the card, she handed the machine to Jack, who then inserted his PIN before handing it back to her. Upon seeing so many figures, Sabrina's hands trembled even more. After about a minute, she completed the payment and handed the card back to Jack with both of her hands, as if afraid that the card would fall down. Mr. Jack, I've completed the payment for the Prince and Princess Palace. But for the office building, the amount is so high. So we will have to go to the bank to get the transaction done, or you'll have to get a higher level card, Sabrina said after Jack received the card. Jack nodded in understanding. It seemed that he could complete what he wanted to do in the bank during this trip. He could open a separate account for the grocery department and Jackson Enterprise. Let's head there then, Jack said as he led the way to the elevator. Sabrina followed closely, giving Jack even more respect after seeing the balance. After all, that was all in liquid state, not to mention about the assets. One could only imagine his wealth.